to rise from the ashes.
Electric Boogaloo.
You see the truth behind the veil, and you know that they're just looking for attention. Oh, you don't let the ruthlessness prevail. Oh, it's time now, light your fires for ascension. Like a phoenix, you burst in a fire, burn a thirst and desire. You transform right up in a flash. You spread your wings to rise from the ashes. You burst in a fire, burn a thirst and desire. You transform right up in a flash. You spread your wings to rise from the ashes. Fire burn, a thirst and desire. You transform right up in a flash. You spread your wings to rise from the ashes. You burst in a fire burn, a thirst and desire. You transform right up in a flash. You spread your wings to rise from the ashes.
Shine bright up all night, we're never slowing down. Fall in love, drunk mistakes, we're bound to hit the ground. Gotta keep this feeling, keep on breathing, even if we're slipping away. So I close my eyes and lose myself now, do it like it's only a day. We got a party for a lifetime. No, we ain't stopping for the sunrise. No, we don't care about the bad nights. And for a second I can feel like this. Make me feel like this. We got a party for a lifetime. No, we ain't stopping for the sunrise. And we don't care about the bad nights. And for a second I can feel like this. Make me feel like this.
Happy Mother's Day.
Young blood made of gold, a mind you can't control. Running wild, can't come down. My head is in the clouds. Gotta keep this feeling, keep on breathing, even if we're slipping away. So I close my eyes and lose myself now, do it like it's only today. We got a party for a lifetime. No, we ain't stopping for the sunrise. No, we don't care about the bad nights. And for a second I can feel like this. Make me feel like this.
Hit that thumbs up as you're coming in. Well, happy Mother's Day to all of you out there. Hope you're doing well. Hope your Mother Day has gone good so far. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, the aunts, the foster parents, the uncles who's had to been mothers, and everything in between. Happy Mother's Day to each of you. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you all. It's good to see you all in chat. And I've got my thing on there. Let's go ahead and do another applause for it. Why not? It's good to see you all in chat. Thank you for joining me. I mentioned doing this live yesterday or the day before yesterday because when this live happened, Trevor, it was a huge deal, really big deal when this came out. And I was modding for Trevor at the time. A lot of us was, and it was a packed house. And I didn't really get to listen to it like I really wanted to do. So I thought we could go over, we won't get all of this in one live, but the things that we've known now after Nina has came out and said her experience with Chris Proudfoot, her and Chris share a child together, and they were once together. Obviously, now they're not. But I thought we may be able to pick up some bits and pieces and might be able to make a little bit more sense on it. New people has came out and shared their experience with Chris, things that they have allegedly saw him do, allegedly saw him say, and just his behavior alone on interviews like web sleuths and the phone calls that he has with the PIs and all of that. So, yes, SRB, thank you so much for 2 months, my sweet friend. Thank you so much for your support, SB. I appreciate it. People like you that keep us around, and I really do appreciate your support, truly. Thank you so much. Guys, if you have not yet, please hit that thumbs up. It takes less than a second. It's a little free thing you can do that makes such a huge difference in getting these children's faces out. That is what we are here for, to get these children's faces out. It takes one person, one single person who sees this and says, oh, wait, I saw this, whenever. And that's all it takes to break a case. Something so simple. You just have to get it into the right hands. So please hit that thumbs up. I would be forever, ever grateful. Okay, guys. So we're going to start out. This is by Trev Time. And I want to thank Trev Time. He is no longer really here. Ooh, hold on. Let me fix this camera. 1 second. He is no longer really here on YouTube per se. I mean, he still watches, obviously, and all of that, but he kept all of his content up, and I talked to him earlier, and Trevor is doing good. Thank God. I'm glad to see that. So thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Nina, for coming out and doing this interview. Yeah, I know it was not easy. I know this was extraordinarily emotional for Nina. This is not just a story. This is her life, and this is her child. So, Lori, thank you so much, my friend. It really was a tough day. It really was a tough day. And, um, if you have any type of, traumatic event that is any DV or anything in that, this may be triggering for some viewers. So I want to put that out there as well. Um, so there's a lot of different uh, things that arise in this interview. So it was very, you can tell she's probably has PTSD from this for sure. Oops, let me find him.
I started talking to him. He was stationed out in San Diego, and we started talking back and forth. Started wanted to get to know him a little bit more. I thought he was a great person in the beginning, but everybody is always perfect in the beginning, right? We fail to see the red flags, and we fail to notice things that we should in the beginning. So he made a couple of trips out here, asked me to marry him, and I made the mistake by saying I do. So we got married. Eventually, we moved to San Diego. I wasn't really ever prepared to move away again from New Mexico. I had went through a divorce a couple years prior to meeting Christopher. And my first husband was military as well, but I was married to him for 9.5 to 10 years, almost 10 years. We made it. He's the father of my other 2 children. And I told him that, I was remarrying and we were moving to San Diego. And he wasn't really for it. He was kind of against it due to the fact that he was stationed out at Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, Texas. And that's about.
Just seeing Nina, yes, this is wife number 4. Just seeing Nina versus Chris, they automatically seem like they are very much 2 different people, right? Sometimes, you put yourself in situations that, you probably shouldn't have ever been in, but, that's how we learn and that's how we grow. But sometimes the lesson is really, really hard. Very much opposite. Very much opposite.
Like 3.5 hours from Albuquerque. So he would always see his kids like every weekend. And he's like, how am I going to see my kids? And I said, well, we'll figure it out. So we packed up after we said I do. I don't remember the exact date when I got married to Christopher. And maybe that's a good thing.
Probably. Most probably.
We moved into the naval housing out there.
It apparently wasn't very memorable for for Nina, right?
And my son, Noah, was 3 at the time, and my oldest was about 7 years old. And she was telling me 7. So I thought everything was great in the beginning. I mean, everything's always perfect, like I said. And then I started seeing bits and pieces of how Christopher really was.
And she makes a good point there. Everything in a new relationship is always great, right? You feel like you're so in love and it's always going to be like this and all of that. But that's the honeymoon phase. I don't know if that's really what love is. I think that's just being new in a relationship. Love to me is someone who is there for you in the really bad times, that's going to, you know, take care of you if you got a broken bone, or you're sick or whatever. That's what love is. Now, she makes a good point, and we've said this, meaning with the 3-hour phone call with Chris and Katie. Is that something they normally did? A 3-hour phone call every night? They should be, I mean, I don't think they're in that honeymoon phase anymore. So that's something that seems like something you do when you're first getting to know someone or whatever, but it just doesn't seem right, in my opinion.
I was a stay-at-home wife. Due to my son being so young, I wanted to, enjoy those years with him. Then my daughter went to school right down the street, so I was home every single day, and it just started seeing like Christopher changed like night and day. It was awkward. I felt really uncomfortable. After a while, we would argue about just the smallest things, and a lot
His true colors were coming out.
of it also had to do with how he disciplined my children.
Here we go. How he disciplined her children. And again, I want to make it very clear that Chris or Katie have not been named suspects, persons of interest, nothing related to Sebastian Rogers' disappearance. They have not been named suspects, persons of interest, whatever. But we are talking about personal opinions, how we feel about, the things that have allegedly taken place. So this is just our opinions, hypotheses, and theories that we will talk about comparing the two.
I'm very protective over my kids. And I didn't want somebody else to discipline my children. I didn't want him talking ugly to them or hurting their feelings.
It's hard for blended families to come together, right? It's difficult. I've thankfully never had to be like that, but you got to remember, they're like the woman's children, like they've always been there with their mother. So there's this guy that comes in and he's trying to tell you what to do, you know what I mean, or trying to discipline you, and it's like, who are you? What? So I can't imagine. I don't blame Nina. It's a very awkward thing for someone to just come in and start disciplining you or trying to discipline you whenever you don't really know him from Adam, right?
And I remember one point in time where Christopher spanked my son really hard, and I got very upset with him, and I said, you can't do that to my son. I said, he's 3, he's a baby still, like you can't.
Hold on. I got it.
And I remember one point in time where Christopher spanked my son really hard, and
Spanked her son really hard. Not just spanked him really hard. He was 3. Again, this goes back to the Elijah Vu thing, right? Remember that He was 3. Why would someone spank a 3-year-old? You spanking a 3-year-old, especially a 3-year-old that's not yours, especially a 3-year-old that's not yours, and really hard. Thank you, Sheila. Oh, honey. Oh, honey. Not a chance. Not a fucking
And
chance.
I got very upset with him, and I said, "You can't do that to my son." I said, "He's 3. He's a baby still. Like, you can't just do whatever you want." I mean, and he got upset, and he's like, "Well, he needs
Not even in preschool yet.
to learn. He needs to man up. He's a man." I said,
He needs to learn. He needs to man up. Where did we hear that from? Anyone know a case where we heard that from a 3-year-old who's now missing as well? Anyone remember that? Anyone remember? Still missing. Elijah Vu. He needs to man up. He needs to become a man. In what universe are we expecting a 3-year-old baby to man up? And Elijah Vu is deceased. He is deceased. Jesse and Katrina are both in jail. Trial will be starting soon enough. That just really got me right there when she said that he needs to man up. A 3-year-old?
"He's 3.
There you go.
He's
Exactly, Nina.
3." And as time went on, like, I could see him getting more aggressive and more aggressive. And I stood up for my kids all the time. I didn't like how like I said, how he talked to them, how he wanted them to stand in the corner all the time. And I didn't like that.
Where did we hear that from? That standing in the corner all the time. God, I'm glad I came back and listened to this. Elijah Vu. He had to stand in the corner for hours in some cases. And he had to become a man. 3-year-old, a 3-year-old becoming a man. No, you are a toddler at 3 years old. You're not a man. You're a toddler.
So I stayed a little bit longer. I ended up eventually getting pregnant with Faith. And it was probably, I want to say, maybe early September that I found out that I was pregnant with Faith. And I remember telling him that I was pregnant, and he wasn't happy about it. So I called my parents back home here in Albuquerque, and I told them the situation. And I said, "Well, Christopher wants me to get an abortion with Faith."
Nina would not do that.
And my parents said, "No, you're not." And I said, "I'm not." So I know he was very upset about me keeping Faith at that point in time. So I came home my grandma had gotten very sick, and I decided to come home. And after that, I just kind of stayed here in New Mexico, because at that time we weren't getting along and we were just like newlyweds, and that should have never happened. And but I saw things, like I said, that were just it wasn't right about him. So I moved home and I did my whole pregnancy by myself. And so I finally, my friends back there in California, my neighbors right across the street were actually calling me. I had one good friend, which is still a really good friend of mine to this day. She called me and said, Nina, Christopher's
No.
getting rid of your furniture and getting rid of your stuff. And I was like, what? And
It seems like he likes to move furniture whenever things are going haywire. He breaks up with someone, or he's trying to control someone taking furniture out of her house. He's switching beds out of the garage.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he's giving away like your little, your home decor stuff. Like he's giving away beds. And I was like, no way. So, and this was about Easter time. So I had went out there. I made a special trip. I asked my mom to go with me, and Isabella and Noah, they went with me, and I was still pregnant with Faith at the time. So we made it. I didn't tell him that we were going out.
Elizabeth, member for 7 months. Thank you, Justin, for your heart expunge up and miss. Oh, thank you, my dear. Thank you so very much. I appreciate the 7 months. Thank you, sweetheart. Appreciate you. Really, truly. Thank you for your support.
Out there. So I kind of, wanted to see myself, because the neighbor also informed me that there was people at the house that shouldn't have been there. So I guess I kind of wanted to sneak up on him and see what he was doing, right? And we pulled up into the driveway, into the driveway, and he was coming out the front door with a bed that he was giving to the neighbor, which
Here we go with the beds again. Here we go with the beds again. Oh, thank you so much, Sky Maiden. Love you too. Thank you so much for 2 months, my dear. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Really means a lot. Truly, thank you.
was my son's bed.
Beds again.
And as soon
Her son's bed. What bed was he messing with in his garage? I wonder. Wonder what the bed was then.
the look on his face,
The used bed. Why is there a used bed being moved around 2 or 3 days, I don't know, after Sebastian goes missing? Why?
was like a deer in headlights.
Especially a used one, because when they got that house, Chris and Katie went and bought brand new furniture and furnished the entire house. I know
And
that.
he dropped the bed right there in the front yard, went back in the front door, slammed the door and locked it on my kids. And my mom told me at that point, she said, I can't believe he's doing this. Like, what is he doing? So I go in and I unlock the door and I said, what are you doing? I said, are you giving away my stuff? And he had nothing to say. So he brought the bed back in, because I knew that's what he was doing. And, the neighbor across the street, like I said, told me. So we stayed there. It was super uncomfortable. My mom felt the tension between the both of us. My children felt it as well. And at the time, Faith started moving. Like I could start, I felt her moving around in my stomach. And I told Christopher, I said, look, I said, put your hand on my stomach. I said, can you feel her move? He said, no.
I believe every word she says. I believe every word she says. Thank you, Kathy S, for 4 months. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for all you do. Love you, sweetheart. Love you too, Kathy. Thank you, my dear. Hey, Jude. Thank you so much, my love. Thank you. Appreciate it. Happy Mother's Day, my love. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. Thank you so much. I believe every word.
When you're pregnant, you always think that your spouse
Look at the hurt.
is going to be super supportive and be super excited that you're pregnant and bringing a life into this world for him, right? But I didn't get that. I didn't get that support that I needed. So we had a conversation my mom brought up between Christopher, myself, and her. And she had said,
You can't fake these emotions.
do you not want Faith? Like, do you not want this baby? And Christopher stated to my mom, he wasn't happy. And he said, what if one of them dies? What if Faith dies or Nina dies on the table or when she's having this baby? Like my mom said, don't talk like that. Like, why are you talking like that? They're still here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I can't chat. It said subscribers only. Are you a subscriber? It should be only on subscriber for 1 minute. Which chat was that from? Let me see here. Here, I'll switch it just to make sure. Give me 1 second. I'll make sure. Yeah, it says only 1 minute. There you go. I took that off just to make sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. Let me know if you can chat now, my dear. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for your support, my dear.
So we left again after a couple days. We came home to Albuquerque. And still, I tried working it out where we were at, but it just wasn't working. I wanted out. And
I agree. I think she's understating, let alone overstating with Chris. I absolutely agree with that. That is well said.
I had faith on my own. Christopher called the hospital. I told him on June 1st that I got admitted into the hospital. And Faith arrived at June 2nd, about 3 or 4 in the morning. And he kept calling the hospital and saying that my wife is in labor, she's there. But Christopher was just so rude and hateful and just.
Chris, rude and hateful? Really? I didn't know we were privy to that.
I mean, he wasn't even there. So then he arrived a couple days later after Faith. I had Faith, and he was the doctors and the nurses there were on high alert due to the fact that they heard Christopher over the phone on how he was being disrespectful to the nurses that were on call that night, as you know, I was waiting to have her. And
betcha they were all female nurses too. Betcha.
I asked that they not give him any more information. So he arrived. I had faith. He arrived a couple days later, like I said. And you could just tell the look on his face, like he wasn't happy at all. Like, didn't say, hey, you did a good job. Didn't say, I'm so happy that you brought my daughter into this world, like nothing. And I remember my sister was holding Faith, and she had to ask Chris, do you want to hold her?
Damn. You can tell the pain. And it's the pain for her daughter, right? It's the pain for her daughter, just knowing that. Is Elizabeth able to chat now? Let me know. Thank you, PR. Appreciate it. I believe her. She's very genuine. Despite describing absolutely horrible situations, she isn't overly dramatic. Interesting that Chris is fighting so hard for a child he never wanted. Well said. Well said. I never understood why some people don't believe Nina's account of what happened. I mean, this woman is clearly has scars, right? And the battle scars, so to speak, to prove it. And look at Chris. I mean, he is a serial marriage. What is it? What do they call him? I don't know. But, he's like married like 27-11 times. It's ridiculous. Look at the pain.
She said, I guess. So she handed her over to Chris. And he stayed there with me for a couple more days because I had a C-section. And on one of the occasions, I can't recall what was happening, but he was raising his voice.
Oh, no.
And he was talking to me very disrespectful in front of one of the nurses. And she had told him, look, she just brought life into this world. She just got major surgery and you're yelling at her. And I have a problem with that. She said, if you continue to do this, I'm going to have to tell social services to come down here. And I'm also going to have to ask you to leave the hospital and not return.
You know how bad that has to, and embarrassing that would have to be? You know how bad you would have to be for a nurse to actually speak up and say, like, if you don't quit, I'm going to call social services and you're going to leave? And how embarrassing and just dreadful that had to be for Nina, just having surgery, just producing life, still trying to recover in the hospital bed, and just total embarrassing. Because most people won't speak up unless it keeps on and keeps on and keeps on, or it's really, really bad, right? They'll let, most people will just be like, all right, it's their business. But then if it's really, really bad, that's when people really speak up. So it had to be, in my opinion, really freaking bad.
So at that point in time, he kind of calmed down after he heard that. But unfortunately, that didn't last very long. He continued to do that. So social services at the hospital was told to come down, and he was pretty much, she said, you can't do that here. And she was really concerned for my well-being at the time, and also,
what is he always so angry about, right? This is obviously a big, big pattern for him. He's always angry. I mean, this should be like literally the most joyous time of his life. He just had a child. 50% of that DNA flowing through Faith's veins right there and just being born is his. And he's throwing a fit. It's beyond. It's beyond. Don, thank you so much. Member for 2 months, my friend. Thank you so much. Appreciate your support, truly. Thank you, my dear. Appreciate that. Why is he always angry? It just doesn't seem like if it's a good time or a bad time, he's always angry.
the fates, because, here is Christopher, dictating and telling me what I can and can't do, and telling the nurses to do their job correctly and all these other things, and raising his voice at me. And, so they had to step in. And so she said, this is it. Like, you're going to have to leave the premises. And, and he got a little upset, and he's like, no, I'm going to change. I'm going to be good. So, they said, okay, but we're watching you. We're watching.
Rather listen to Nina, we'll try later. I don't know what that means. Sorry. Elizabeth, I don't know why it's not letting you chat.
Watching you.
Weird.
So after that, we had left. They discharged all of us from the hospital, and he didn't want to stay at my parents' house because my mom and dad live in a trailer, and he doesn't like that. It's a house, right? Still. So he rented a room at Kirtland Air Force Base, and they have like lodging there, which is like a house, old base housing, and we ended up getting one of those. And we stayed there for a while. I remember one night in particular where we all had went out and got something to eat to bring it back to the room. I had went into the restroom, I believe that's where I was at, and Faith was in her car seat, and my oldest.
Oh God, here's the car seat thing. I do remember this. PR, thank you so much. Look at how out of control he gets in public, just like JP Miller. Imagine the things he does to these women in private. Absolutely frightening. Well stated. Well stated. Thank you for that. Can't imagine. It's probably very scary. Don, thank you so much for gifting a membership, my dear. If you received that membership, please thank our sweet Don. Appreciate you, Don. Thank you, sweetheart.
Daughter was in the living room with my son and Christopher. Well, anyways, I guess I wasn't moving fast enough for Christopher, but the baby started crying. Faith started crying. And, she's crying, and I'm trying to get to her as fast as I can. And when she was in the car seat, my oldest daughter at the time witnessed this with my 3-year-old son. when she was in the car seat, he ended up hitting the car seat against the wall. And he's getting upset because she's crying. And then when she was in her car seat, there was a coffee table right there, and he ended up tossing her on the coffee table with the car seat because he was so irate that she was crying.
To me, that shows that she is being very careful, because she even says tossing. He basically threw, is what it sounds like. That is, again, Chris gets mad at the infants if they're crying and he cannot control it. It just went back to where I can chat. Okay, good. I'm glad we got it fixed for you, dear. Thank you. I think the higher power, it keeps my evil brother in prison. Yes, she's minimizing her trauma. Exactly, Olivia. This is what Sebastian had to live with. Can you imagine Sebastian even slightly challenging Chris? Or Katie, for that matter. Anyone challenging him, his castle, his domain. Psychopath.
And I said, hey, I said, what's your problem? I said, what are you doing? Like, don't, she's a baby. She's going to cry. I wish I would have just. I wish I would have never met him.
That's painful, man. Very painful.
I'm sorry.
Right. And Erica, I think about Sebastian, things, can trigger, people that are autistic for, that would not normally trigger you or I, but for, whatever, the overstimulation or whatever. And, there can be some meltdowns, right? And I can't imagine Sebastian having a meltdown like that, and then Chris just absolutely saying, man up, right? Or suck it up, or why are you doing this? Can't imagine. I'm not taking calls. Not taking calls.
I should have left a long time ago. Because no children ever deserve this. My kids didn't. So he left again to San Diego. A couple of days went by. Then all of a sudden he's like, well, why don't you move to Hendersonville? And I was like, why though? In my head. And I knew it was a bad idea. I just knew it. I knew it because our
Absolutely. Remember, he was also going through teenage hormones as well. So Chris would not have been happy to have him answer him back. And exactly, he's challenging him. He's becoming physically bigger. He's, he sees other boys his age, and, he's probably wanting to be, very similar to his peers. And I bet you that didn't go well with Chris.
Marriage
Poor
was on the
Katie.
rocks. I wasn't happy. He wasn't a good father figure to my children. I don't know why I said yes. Well, anyways, so let me back up. So before he left back to San Diego, Faith ended up going back into the NICU. She ended up getting jaundice, and she went back to the NICU. So she was in the NICU, I want to say, for a week to a week and a half. And that was when Kathy, Chris's mother, came out, flew down with her brother, Duran guy, or they call him Big D. They came down, and she was in the NICU. And that was when I felt like a plan was made, because like I said, our marriages it was on the rocks. And one of my neighbors had told me in San Diego, they had warned me. They had said, Nina, be careful, because Christopher is coming up with a plan with his mother. And they're
Coming up with a plan with his mother.
Oh my God!
No. This is where it starts. Here we go.
planning on taking the baby away from you. And I was like, what? Like, thinking to myself, it can't be true from somebody that's supposed to love you, right? Like somebody that you're supposed to share your life.
Very good point, Chair. Marriage on the rocks, huh? Chris said him and Katie were on the rocks too. Interesting. Yes. Was mommy coming up with a plan? Remember, Chris was trying to get also Sebastian to go with Seth. Was it not quick enough? Don't know.
Life with, like, why would he want to take the baby away from me? And she warned me. But I was like, no, why would they do that? So then after Faith got out of the NICU, we were no longer staying in base housing. We were staying at one of the NBC suites down here.
Wow.
Then his mom came up with an idea. She goes, well, since you guys, we'll be moving to Hendersonville. And I was like, I felt like, okay, well, maybe. And he's like, well, you'll get help. You're going to get help from my family. And, but I was already getting help here from my parents, with my other two children that they helped me raise. So that I went along with it. Like I said earlier, even though I knew it was wrong to go, I still went, hoping that my marriage would work out. So she ended up taking Faith, although I was against it. Kathy Bowers Hawks and her brother Duran ended up taking Faith. And my mom and dad were like, my mom started crying, and she goes, why are you letting them take the baby? And I said, because Christopher said that it's going to be too hard for her to travel, to travel. And I'm sorry. They went back. So Kathy and Big D went back to Tennessee. So 2 weeks later, about 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later, Kathy ended up coming back by herself. I do apologize. She came back by herself to pick up Faith. She was here in Albuquerque for one night, and I was, even though I was against it, I let her go with Kathy, because Christopher said it was going to be too hard to travel with her being a new baby. So he came out from San Diego, rented a U-Haul, packed all our stuff, and we pretty much left. And that's how I ended up in Hendersonville, Tennessee. that's when my whole life changed. That's when my nightmare happened. We lived with his mother and his stepfather, Terry, for about a good month because our apartment wasn't going to be ready until the end of August, about the end of August. So it was really uncomfortable living there. You know, Terry and Kathy would always bicker at each other, and she'd be bickering with Christopher. And, you know, my kids were a problem, an issue. It was always something. I felt really uncomfortable and I wanted to come home. I just wanted to come home to everything that I knew. I wanted my mom and my dad, even though I was a grown woman, I needed that. So we all had to get along, tried to for the most part, but it was just an awkward situation. I always felt like we were the outcast. Never felt accepted by the Proudfoots or the Bowersocks. On one occasion, Christopher was cutting my oldest daughter's nails and she didn't want her nails cut. And Christopher, you know, grabbed a hold of her hand and she pulled her hand away. And my daughter at the time had braces. He backhand Isabel in the face and busted her whole lip open.
There we have it. There we have it. Was it just the one time there, Chris? Was it just the one time? Nina is saying that you hit this child in the face, a child that had braces. Wow. I don't believe it was one time.
I should have left, but I didn't. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't be here. I don't want to be here anymore.
Okay, so I have an update about, sort of an update about Nina and the court case. And my source was there with the courts. So, was there with the courts. And there has been nothing decided yet. The judge has not decided anything. The judge has not made a decision yet. So that is the update, is that the judge has not made a decision yet in relation to what is going on in the court case. But my source was there at the hearing. Okay?
So I would come up with every excuse just to come home, but yet, you know, I couldn't come home. So finally we went and we moved into the apartment. And a phone call, like as soon as Christopher was leaving, he settled us in, got a storage unit of what couldn't fit in the apartment. He got everything ready, all right? Him and his family. As soon as he knew that we were comfortable, he left back to San Diego. But the night prior to him leaving, he had got a phone call or text message that night, and it said something like, "Hey baby," or
Debbie, that has been done for sure.
around something like that, saying that when is your flight coming in? And I was like, what? Like, who's texting him? So I did confront him, and like he said on one of the podcasts is that I did slap him. Yes, I did slap him across the face, because who's he talking to at this time and saying, and I mean, he could say that she was lesbian, I mean, up and down, but I mean, at this point in time, I didn't know what to believe. And I was like, okay. So then after that following day, he finally left. His mother came to pick him up to take him to the airport, and he went back to San Diego. And I was left in Hendersonville with 3 children and pretty much no help from anybody. So I had found a job. I had a job, and Kathy helped once in a while. And I needed to find a babysitter. So his biological father, Michael, and his stepmother, Linda, at that point in time offered their services and said that, they can take care of my 2 older children. And Kathy didn't want Faith going over to Michael's house. So she took care of her. And at that point in time, Christopher, we were still communicating. And like I said, our marriage was on the rocks. So my oldest daughter had gotten sick, and she has upper respiratory issues. So I took her to the emergency room in Hendersonville, and that's when Hendersonville transferred her to Vanderbilt. Is that what I believe that hospital's name is? And I was kind of frantic, because I was like, well, what am I going to do with my 3-year-old son and with the baby? Like, who's going to help me? So I was, I called Chris, and I told him, I said, can your mom watch, Faith, or can somebody help me? Everybody was so quick to help me at that point in time. So Faith stayed with Kathy, and Noah Bryce went with his sister, Melissa. And I went with my oldest daughter. We got transported downtown. And so we stayed there. I can't recall how many days we were there. And Christopher I'd check on the kids, see how they were doing. And that point in time, I was like, okay, well, we got discharged, telling everybody, okay, you can bring Noah back, and telling Kathy, okay, I'm going to be home, so you can bring Faith back. Thinking that my children were going to come home to me. I get back to the apartment complex, and I pulled into the parking lot, and I see Melissa just pulled in right next to me. It seems like they were already there waiting for me to get there. And then she said, I can't stay. I would love to stay, but I can't stay because I don't know what they were doing. And she does, my son gets out of her van, and then we walk inside, and I was waiting, for Faith to get there. And we weren't there but less than maybe 5 minutes. And I hear a knock at the door. And I was like, oh, great, Faith is home. And it was Kathy's friend, Patty, that's an attorney. And she said, are you called me by my real name, Gomez, and I was like, yeah, and she said, you've been served.
Oh my God.
She said, you have a protection order against you. You can't see faith. And Chris is filing for divorce.
They try to make it seem like she was the crazy one, right? Like she was the one, because I guess Chris's mother had an attorney and was working for her.
And I was like, what? So then I go back, and thinking like my heart just drops. Like, what? Like, is this a dream? Like, this can't be happening to me. Like, this cannot be happening to me right now. So then I get on the phone and I try calling Chris and he didn't answer. And then I was like, rushing around, and I get my kids in the truck and I go to the Gallatin police department, and I, was ringing the call button. And like finally 30 minutes later, somebody shows up.
Yes,
and I told them what happened and I showed them the paper and they said, yep, we can't help you.
can't help
All I
you.
can think about is my baby. Like, how am I gonna get my baby back? Like, why is this happening to me?
The pain, man. Look what Chris has
So I
done.
go to Kathy's house and I knock on the door. And I remember I had Christopher's stepmom, Linda, on the phone with me. She was on speakerphone, and I told her what was going on. Little did I know everybody was in on this. And Terry answered the door, which is Chris's stepfather. And he told me that I need to get off of his fucking property. And here little Noah, who's 3 years old, and my Isabella is 7. And they're standing behind me.
Exactly, Mohawk.
And I said, please tell me what's going on. I said, where's Faith? I said, please give me my baby back. And he told me, get off my fucking property. And he took out a...
Now, remember what Matt told us the other day. How this person
green
supposedly
and black
behaves.
baseball bat. And he told me to fucking leave or he's gonna bash me and my kids' heads.
Wow. Or he's going to bash her and her. Wow. That is too much, man. That really is. That's just too much.
So me and my kids walked out to my truck and we got back in it. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? This is a nightmare. What am I gonna do? And Chris was inside of the house with the baby. I saw his shadow. And they lied for him and they said that he was in California and he really wasn't. So we go back to the apartment, and I'm trying to gather all my thoughts together. I'm trying to keep as calm as I can for my other two children, but all I could do is just cry and just think, like, what is my next move? What am I going to do now? I'm so far away from home. I'm far away from my parents. I'm far away from everything that I've ever known. So then I make a call to my brother, who he lives in Phoenix. And I told him what was going on, and he was so upset. And he's like, oh my God. And he's like, have you called mom and dad yet? And I said, no. And he told me himself that day, he said, you're going to fight. You're going to fight like hell to get Faith back. You don't leave that baby in that state. You fight like hell to get her back, whatever.
And Nina has, and she absolutely continues to. She's fighting with everything she's got.
And that's what I did. I called my mom and dad, and it had to happen after midnight here, so about like 1 something our time there. My dad answered the phone, and I couldn't talk. All I could do is cry. I couldn't get the words out, and finally he said, calm down. Please calm down and tell me what happened. And I told him.
Jessica, Nina is a real mom, yes, and I hope she and Faith are having a good Mother's Day. Thank you for 2 months. Thank you for 2 months, Jessica. I appreciate the support. Hope they're having a great
I said,
Mother's
Daddy,
Day.
they took my baby.
Damn.
And all he could get out is, oh no, they hurt my baby. And he started crying. And he woke my mom up. And he said, you hang in there, we're on our way. So every single day, I worked at a local Great Flips out there. And I went in from the time it opened to the time it closed. That following morning, after all this had happened, I went to my bank account and to my savings. I've been saving money through this whole entire time, but I've been using it since we were out there so I can help support my kids and myself. But little did I know that Christopher wanted me to use all my money because he didn't want me to have anything, so I wouldn't retain a lawyer. So that morning before I went to work and dropped my kids off, at the time, Michael and Linda, which is Christopher's biological father, and his stepmother were still helping me watch my kids because they still had to work. And I went into my bank account, and I remember I only had $1,100 in there. And I was looking through the phone book, or looking through, my phone, and seeing, well, I need to get a lawyer. Who can I get? Thank God for Mr. Edwards, because I went into his office before,
She does.
I I called into work that day pretty much, and I said I need to just think. I said I need a day off. So I went into his office, and I ended up doing a consultation with him. And I remember him, he told me what his fees were, and he told me, I told him the situation. And he was in shock, and he goes, my God, he goes, this all happened? Like, you should have never came out here. And I said, I know, I should have never, came out here.
That was a way for him to control her. That was a way, many times abusers will get you to move out of your state back to their state where they have more control with their family. You're away from yours. It's a way to gain power.
So at the time, I explained the situation to Mr. Edwards, and I was crying. And I said, Mr. Edwards, I said, I just want my baby back. And then I remember I still had my wedding ring on at that point in time. And I slipped off my wedding ring and I sat it on his desk. And he looks at me and I said, please, sir, I would do anything just for my baby back. He said, you're all I have. Please help me. I remember he took out his little magnifying glass and he looked at it and he put his head down. And he goes, God. He goes, I work for money. I said, and I know, sir. I said, and I promise I will pay you every dime that I can. Just help me bring my baby home. And he said, you got yourself a lawyer. And he fought.
Well,
He fought like hell for Faith. We went to, everything happened in Gallatin Courthouse. My parents were there. We went to the first trial, and I remember walking in the courthouse and my stomach was turning. I hadn't seen my baby. And they had my baby there. Just in arm's reach, and I couldn't even hold her, and I couldn't even kiss her, and I couldn't even tell her I love her. So we went to trial. I don't know what you want to call it, a trial, a hearing. I think I was just so oblivious to everything at that point because I was so heartbroken that my baby was gone. And we go into the courtroom and all I had was my dad in there. And their side, all the benches filled up with his family being loud and laughing. And it was just my daddy and me, and Mr. Edward. And I remember the judge, his attorney, just everybody in there. All the hurtful things that they put on black and white about me.
Can you imagine?
Just the eyes glaring.
In my opinion, I think Seth or Chris helped Katie draw up that letter when Seth and Katie were breaking up. They say they weren't together then, but in my opinion,
At me
they were.
and making it seem like I was a bad person. And I sat there and he asked me a couple of questions and I answered. One of them was, "Why did you move out here, Miss Proudfoot?" I said, "Your Honor, to try to make my marriage work," said, in which it didn't. I said, "I made a mistake by coming out here. I made a mistake by trusting somebody. And I said, if I could change back the hands of time, I probably wouldn't have even came out here." And they did whatever they were doing, and then the judge, said that I only had visitations with Faith, and they all had to be supervised. So then the supervised visitations started happening, and we would visit Faith. And I remember one visitation that had happened at a park. I can't recall the park's name, but there was a duck pond and really nice playground for the kids. And I remember Kathy showing up with Faith.
I'll never forget, right when this was getting ready to go out, Chris kept blowing Trevor's phone up, a lot of our phones up.
And
It was just, we did not
we
want.
all sat there, got Faith out of the car seat. I was slamming on her and kissing her, and telling her how much I love her, how much we missed her. And I handed her to her big sister. And I took a picture of those two. We only had about, I believe it was between 20 and 30 minutes of visitation with Faith once a week, if I'm right. There's a lot of things that after so many years, it's hard. Like, I would just remember, like, the big things happened. That was one of them. It was between 20 and 30 minutes. And my son was there. And then Kathy got her ready to leave. They had to leave first, and then we left after. I remember holding my son and my daughter's hand, and we're walking back in the And my started crying, and I started crying, and then my daughter started. I'm gonna run fast. I'm gonna go faith, and you meet me on the other side of the park, Mama. I'm so fasted that you drive off. And that Christopher and his family has brought to my family is and we went home. Trial a couple weeks later was I believe I want to say it was in or November. I can't recall the date. But at that trial, to my God, that we were going to bring Faith home. And we did that courthouse and with my mom, dad, and Isabella. And no against Christopher. My daughter was going to testify. They had said, his lawyer at the time had said, don't let her daughter testify. And
Sorry, guys. I'm having internet problems at the moment. I'm trying to fix it. 1 second. Okay, hopefully it'll get better. 1 second.
so we went without it. Nobody testifying that day. Christopher had ended up getting, he was talking at the time. Judge was asking him all kinds of questions. And he made me look like a monster. He made me look like I was the problem. He made me feel awful about myself.
Should be better.
And saying all these things in front of these people that weren't even true. It wasn't even true. And then it came to my attorney talking. And at that point in time, I was just like, gosh, like, oh God, please let a miracle. Just like, let this just be over with.
Now, remember, they have been, in custody war for quite some time now. Right? Quite some time. And Chris, he gets Faith, for, I guess, major holidays, and that's about it. Remember, Seth moved closer to be with Sebastian.
When people
Chris
tell lies and when they say hurtful things about you, you just
hasn't.
feel so disgusting about yourself. And that's the way I felt. And I remember we needed to break and come back. And Mr. Edwards at that point in time went into the chambers with the judge, and I don't know what was being said, being done there, but he was in there for a while. And he ended up coming back out. Court was back in session, everything. Sometime the judge just had enough. The judge was done hearing everything that had happened here. What you
Doing it again.
say anymore? He's like, you premeditated this? This was premeditated. You knew exactly what you and your family were doing. You brought this woman out here with her children, and you guys knew exactly what you were doing. And he said, 8:30, Gallatin's Sheriff's Department, that's where the exchange is going to happen. My heart just dropped, like, and my attorney looks at me and he said, you just won. You won. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit my knees, and all I could think about is, I couldn't wait to wrap my arms around my baby again. And the judge, everybody was hysterical on his side, of course, and my daughter and my mom are waiting out there. And I remember his uncle going out there, and he swung open the door, and he was so angry. And my daughter overheard him say, she won. She won. And I remember my dad was still sitting behind me, and and he had tears in his eyes. Attorney might followed me outside, and we went out, and there was just so much chaos coming from the Proudfoots, and we went outside very humbly, and he took us from the courthouse the other way, and right there and then I hit my knees. I finally could be relieved. Pretty in my life to get help me get my baby. And we went back to the apartment. We packed what we could, and we pretty much left everything else behind in the storage unit. At that time, I didn't need anything. Because I had everything I've ever wanted. So I remember my dad saying, come on, we gotta go. So we went to the sheriff's department, and we showed up, and I remember I told my dad, I said, wait here. I said, stay at that Wendy's. So my dad stayed at that Wendy's waiting for me, and he said, okay, he's like, you call me when you're on your way. so I can follow you out, okay? And I said, okay, Dad. We went to the sheriff's department. Christopher and his Michael.
Is the video
Linda.
working? Damn this thing. One second.
Kathy. So then the exchange was happening, and they live streamed me on Facebook. They said, I can't believe the judge awarded custody. You know, and they were always just standing there, I remember. And I remember his mother had her phone in her hand. Or his. And she threw it at me. And she said, I think you're going to need this. Laughing. Then I said, thank you. And my two younger children were sitting in the back. And then I said, okay, can I have Faith back now? So I forget if it was Kathy or Chris, but they tossed her at me. And I caught her. And I said, thank
Tossed her at him. Her.
you. So then I get her in her car seat, trying to buckle her up and telling my kids, I said, you need to buckle up. I said, we're going to leave. I remember at the time, and that time, and Christopher got inside of my driver's seat of my truck. And everybody was still filming live stream book. Why don't you put it in reverse and drive over her?
Did you hear that? We're going to rewind that.
Everybody was still filming live streaming me on Facebook. And put it in reverse, drive over her. And I told my kids, I said, get out. I'm trying to get Faith out again. And I told my kids, and I remember he put the drive reverse. And I told my kids, I said, out. I said, jump, get out. And I remember them running into the sheriff's department, and I had Faith, and I'm running, and I'm yelling. I'm asking for help. I said, somebody please help me. Nobody came out. And then finally, he came in, Christopher, behind me. And they finally opened the door. And they put me in a back room. with my kids. They turned the lights off on us. In the process of me calling my attorney to tell him what was going on, Kathy disconnected my cell phone. And I remember Mr. Edwards calling the police department and telling them they need to let me go. And at the time, Christopher was still in the military. And Mr. Edwards, I remember them telling him, you know, you need to go, because this could possibly cause Mr. Proudfoot his career. So at that time, I got escorted outside by a couple of sheriffs that were there. But I mean, they seemed like they knew each other, all of them. The Proudfoot. And I remember Christopher had asked one of the if so I remember getting in my truck after I got the kids in, and I called my dad and I told him what happened. He was so mad. He goes, he was lucky I wasn't there. I'd have knocked the shit out of him. He said. So I said, all right, Dad, I'm coming. Well, everybody followed me down the interstate. My dad and I were weaving in and out of traffic, trying to lose them. The whole family were following me and Dad about 80, 90 miles an hour. We were going down the interstate just to get away from them.
Following them at 80 and 90 miles an hour, trying to get away from them. So they follow people around too. Where have we heard people getting threatened? That's been searching. Just saying. Bingo.
We drove all night. We finally got to Little Rock, Arkansas. And Dad had asked me, are you tired? So I could see if I could try to sleep. We couldn't sleep. So then we drove all the way home. We were all scared. We didn't know what was gonna happen. We drove. The relief that I had just to see, I've never felt so relieved to see that New Mexico. Welcome to New Mexico sign. I was finally home. Finally, we made it. Chris kept calling, and I avoided him like a plague. Because the judge in Tennessee awarded me custody. He had no jurisdiction over Faith or myself or my other two children. And at the time of all this, they brought CPS involved in that case over there. So we get home here, not even a couple days goes by. He ended up calling CPS on us here. and using CPS against me every chance that he got. Showing up to my kids' school, scaring my kids, just like he did in Tennessee. So I filed for divorce here, which I should have filed on tribal land at the time, because I wouldn't be going through this. So the divorce happened, but it dragged on and on and on because Christopher made a big deal about absolutely everything. I had to ask for permission to leave Bernalillo County. I had to tell him what I was doing, and if I left New Mexico, he had to know. I am part Native American, so our reservation is probably about 4 to 5 hours from Albuquerque, and at the time, my grandmother was still alive. So we would go out there to see her, and he really never wanted me to take Faith out there.
Hey guys, I want to show y'all something real quick. We'll go back to that, but I just want to show you something. A neighbor posted this. I am posting anonymously because I am a neighbor and would like to protect myself and my family. Okay. Our neighborhood has already been through a lot since Sebastian was reported missing. Neighbors harassed. I do not want to create more drama. However, I do think it is important to correct misinformation that is being said. I need to set the record straight on something I keep hearing over and over again that is about to make me scream. The BS that Chris said he called SCSO instead of 911 because of where we live is just that. It's absolutely ridiculous. He claims that because we live in a county and not in city limits, it's easier to call SCSO at Sumner County office. So he would get transferred all over the place. Shake my head. You cannot reach an emergency personnel through the SCSO number. It tells you on the automated system that if you have an emergency, you must hang up and dial 911. The only person you will get if you stay on the line waiting for someone to pick up is a non-emergency dispatcher. If, all caps, that dispatcher finds out you are calling for an emergency, the dispatcher will tell you to hang up and dial 911, or they will transfer you to 911 emergency dispatch. If he is saying he didn't want to waste time being transferred, yet that's exactly what would happen if you call SCSO for an emergency. They transfer you or ask you to hang up and dial 911 so an emergency dispatcher can receive your call and dispatch emergency personnel that is closest to you at that point. The fastest approach would have been for her, meaning Katie, to call 911 as soon as she realized Sebastian is gone. I've had to call 911 after hitting a deer. It literally took me maybe 5 to 8 minutes for emergency personnel to get to me. One second. I can't see what this says. To call 911, to call the non-emergency line, you cannot reach 911 something. I pray that never happens. I would call my husband first to let him know that I know for a fact that he would tell me to hang up and call 911, even if I were hysterical, because I'm the one in the area and the one that they can trace my calls directly to my house if I'm unable to talk. This frustrates me so much. He's lying about this phone call. And I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Something is wrong. Just like Don and Candace, they called the non-emergency line. These people are calling the non-emergency line for a reason. Lots of red flags and distractions. Absolutely. He's bringing the lies on. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, all of Tennessee has 911. I live where the price of eggs in China are high. We have 911 in the sticks of Tennessee. Hendersonville is a major suburb of Nashville area, not like the country parts of Tennessee. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh Diesel, where did you send it? Where did you send that video?
And on top of that, he really never wanted
That as
Faith to
well.
be Native American.
Something's up with that 911 call.
Christopher knew
Telling you.
that I was Mexican American and also Native American, but he hated the fact that, and he still hates the fact that Faith is part Native American. So just everything, he would take me back to court for just everything. It wasn't a good divorce. And the parenting plans, it had to be his way or nobody's way. He had to have the last word, and this is what he wanted, and his attorney made sure that's exactly what he got. A lot of times I gave in because I wanted it to be over. I didn't want to have to or have somebody dictate what I can and can't do. I mean, I've been a mother for an X amount of years at this time, and it wasn't like, I'm new to all this. But everything had always had to have been Christopher's way. And even though I gave him what he wanted, it was something different. Oh, Faith can't wear leggings, or, just the stupidest things, or, it was dumb. I can't even recall how many hearings I went to with Christopher. It's been horrible. So at this point in time,
This is still happening, folks.
I didn't really agree to the parenting plan. I didn't like it, but I signed it anyways, just because I wanted it to be over with. The divorce was finally final. And he was still stationed, I believe, in San Diego at this point in time. He was, if I'm correct, he was already living with Katie when we were still married.
Yep.
We were going through the divorce, but he had moved in with her. And I was pretty surprised how fast he moved on with his life. Like we never mattered. Like Faith was like, he never had a family. But I should have known that as well prior to the marriages before me, like how he just moved on so quickly with his life. So he would take Faith out there when
with everything that's going on in Chris and Katie's life right now, it's probably not a good idea to add a child in the mix of all of this when one is missing, which I don't think the judge would ever, and I still say this, I don't think the judge will ever put another child in somewhere that a child has been missing and they don't know what
he was
happened.
little, like for 2 weeks or a week, and Katie and them would be living the family life. I at the time did not know Sebastian or Katie. I would just see Katie through FaceTime where she would be doing something in the background. And I would ask Christopher, like, I would tell him, I can't believe you've moved on with your life so quick. Like who does that?
Chris.
Well, back and forth we would be going, with Faith. And I finally moved on with my life. But Christopher had made a statement the other night on one of the interviews, the podcasts that he was doing. And I didn't like the way he said this, how he called Nina moved in with a man. Like, he knows this person's name. And he deserves to be called his name, not the man. And remind you, I've known Wayne for over 3.5 years. He was my client before we even got exclusive, like being in a relationship, before we even moved in together. He knew I had children. I mean, so for him to sit there and say that, he basically made it sound like he didn't know this person. He does. So here we are. Faith is 6. I'm still living in this nightmare that he's created. We live in fear every single day. We're constantly watching over our backs. My kids don't even know what a normal childhood should feel like, because they were exposed to all this at a very young age. The awful things that other people could do.
The body that was in the pond, I believe, is a female. It is a female, from what I understand.
My oldest daughter said it best. She said, "Mom, I feel like I was robbed of my childhood because of Chris. Because of everything that he's done. I've had to grow up so quick to protect my siblings. And you protecting us and always living in fear. Being called to the office and wondering if Child Protective Services was there."
Guys, I'm going to pause it right here. We're at 2 hours. I'm coming back tonight. We're going to finish the second part. I will be back before that, though. We're going to be doing a live on a new case as well. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there and anyone who has had to play the parent role. God bless each and every one of you. Thankful for each of you. I hope your Sunday and your weekend went great. Enjoy your time together with your family as well. Make some time. Cherish the moments. Life is so short. Thank you, Jill. Welcome along. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. If you guys haven't hit that thumbs up button yet, I would really appreciate it. It's a free way to get the word out there for Sebastian and all of these missing children that need found and found soon with justice. Thank you so much. Love you too, Tar. Love you, Cash. Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys in a little bit. I'll be back. Love you guys. Bye-bye.